Before we begin today's episode, I have a brief invitation. If the content of this show resonates with you and you'd like to dive a little deeper, we'd love to invite you to come check out our work at Soulful Impact. All of our offerings, from our online workshops to our deep dive wilderness-based Vision Quest program, are all designed to support you in coming more fully alive, in inhabiting more fully the deepest truth of who you really are, so that you can create authentic, aligned, and regenerative impact. Learn more and reach out anytime at soulfulimpact.co.
I have 3 kids. I run a business. I have a husband. I run another business with my husband. There's a lot of things going on, right? We just moved to another country. We're learning a new language. My nervous system is operating at a very high level, right? I need to nurture it. I need to take care of it. I need to love it. And I can only see the amazingness of my life if my nervous system feels that too.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Soulful Impact podcast. I'm your host, Brooks Barron. Today, I have a very exciting episode where we get to dive into the key terrain of body awareness and body intelligence. These factors are incredibly important to the journey of soul and the journey of soulful impact. And I'm very excited to say that my guest on today's episode is a true master of this terrain. Franziska Gonder is an executive and somatic leadership coach to high-performing founders, CEOs, investors, and political operatives around the world. As a leading voice on the intersection between somatics and leadership, she was recently highlighted in Forbes in a great article titled "Healing the Emotional Crisis in Leadership Through Somatic Connection." Franzi offers the reflection that soulful impact creates holistic success, whereas narrower definitions of impact are much more likely to include negative side effects.
Taking care of health has everything to do with impact, everything. And if you can't allow yourself the multidimensionality of what quote-unquote success looks like, then that's where we need to start.
One of the most inspiring elements of this episode for me personally was the opportunity to talk to Franzi about her journey of parenting. Her level of attunement to her kids, which is a natural outcome of her own somatic journey and awareness, is nothing short of remarkable. And she shares how that has allowed her family to navigate a journey of healing that defies much of conventional thinking and goes beyond what is currently explainable by science.
We literally just went with the belief that the nervous system creates self-healing, and it did.
Please enjoy this conversation with the inspiring, soulful, and charismatic Franziska Gonder. Hello, Franzi. Welcome to the Soulful Impact podcast.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. So excited. You just opened the door for me in our prep. I'm really excited.
Me too. Yeah, I'm so glad to be here with you and to share with our listeners what Franzi's referring to there is we just sat and got present together for a few minutes before starting the recording, and I just invited us to connect with each other in the space of soul through this conversation. Franzi and I have actually probably spent less than total of 5 hours together.
Yeah, feels like we spend a very long time with each other.
But there's this knowing that feels like it lasts lifetimes.
Mm-hmm.
So
totally. Yeah, that's what you just invited me into, to tap back into that as I got out of my crazy, what just happened around me, and then you pulled me into this room, and now we're both ready to go.
Yeah, now we're here.
Beautiful.
So to begin our exploration together today, I'd love to hear you share in your own words a little bit about what does soul mean to you?
So first of all, soul, the moment you said that, I got really tingly, exciting feelings in my stomach. Soul makes me feel really excited. There's something really exciting about soul. And that journey towards soul that never ends, and it's always unfolding in front of you again and again and again. It feels super sacred to me, and yet it feels like something I want to share with everyone. So it's not isolated; it's communal. And soul is something that we all, for me, soul is something that we all feel, but very few of us learned how to say it out loud. Um, so I think we all feel soul. We all feel when things are soulful. Um, um, and we're afraid to share the goodness of it. Because for many, it sounds, I think we've all grown, especially our generation has grown up in a way where it's like, it was still considered a little woo. And and it is not at all. It's super real, tangible. It creates culture. It creates harmony. It creates discomfort. It creates all of it, and as a result, it creates sort of like how we witness ourselves, each other, cultures, nations, states. So that's the first thing that comes up for me. And then the second piece, I think very intimately almost for myself, soul means truth and clarity. There's something about, and I've recently gotten more and more involved even in this type of wording as I've found out for myself how much I learned to replace truth and clarity with power for a very long time. And on my journey towards, always getting closer to my own soulful journey, I think we're always, as I said, it's always unfolding. It was only a matter of time for me to kind of realize that it was not power that it is that we're all after, even from like a really holistic standpoint, right? And we say like, this is really powerful. I'm so happy for you. I think what we really, at least where I'm standing right now, what we really mean is, I love how you discovered that truth for you.
Yes.
Right? That feels really clear coming out of your mouth. How does that feel? Right?
Wow.
And that's soul for me. When people sit and stand in front of me and I can feel that truth, that clarity in their hearts, in their minds, in their bodies, that's soul for me.
Yeah. I'm just letting that kind of land for me over here. Yeah, truth and clarity, and the way that we confuse that with power.
Right?
It's like, yeah, because there is in a way there is such power to soul, but it's a power that comes from truth and clarity. It's not a power in the sense of like power over
Yeah.
somebody
Or
else,
attainment of.
or right, something you
Right.
necessarily
Yeah.
won,
Yeah.
but actually a natural kind of empowered
Yeah.
sense of truth and clarity that just flows from the deepest place within all of us when we can allow that.
Yeah. Yeah. I find power actually very disembodied. In where I'm sitting and standing, I find it very disembodied. Whereas truth and clarity is something that is really easy to embody. When I'm standing in my truth, it's very obvious that I am. My shape is different. I stand differently. I look differently. My eyes project something else. They're almost like shining. So there's something there when people stand in their truth, and in their clarity almost. It feels like it's more rooted than power. For me, it's like power is a little bit like it's almost like a little on top of truth and clarity, as in it's sort of like, oh, it's just a matter of time. Like you'll see, like once you peel the power layer, there's truth and clarity on. That's what it feels a little bit.
I'm loving this. Tell us more about how you define power.
That's a good question. I think power. I think it's a matter of like what power is for me, and then what power is for most of us, right? So I think power for me, growing up, has always been or has always felt very authoritarian. I personally didn't have a lot of like good examples of power. Um, or have I grown up in a culture that had a really good relationship with power? Um, so power always meant over, like what you just said, like, like having the ability to say something whether you like it or not. Um, it had very little conscious witnessing involved, very little sort of like understanding of each other, relating to each other, understanding how we can create that together. Um, it had very little to do with what we did at the beginning, like taking a deep breath and being like, what are we coming with today? How are we feeling? Right. So there's that. And then I think the truth for us societally too is that we have that there's this connotation around power. And we're really all trying so hard to always kind of like get to a better definition of it, but still using the same word. Um, and and so maybe I think this is what I was trying to like highlight a little bit of this sort of like maybe it's a completely different word. Maybe it's not power at all. What if we strip that power away and just kind of like meet each other in truth and clarity? What's true for you? What's true for me? Does that fit? No, it doesn't. Oh, okay. Right. Wouldn't that be very harmonious if we can just acknowledge that our shared truth is not aligned? Um, and would that help us to kind of come either to a place where like, what's our creative compromise here? Or, say like, this doesn't work over time. I'm not saying giving up immediately, but over time.
Yeah. No, I hear you pointing to the way that power has an agenda. Power wants to be right about its agenda, wants to serve itself, kind of no matter what it takes or the costs on others.
I think, let me put it this way, because power is so socially over, like we have such an idea, understanding of what power is because it was so predefined for us,
Hmm.
right? It's very hard for us to kind of like find our own true definition of it because the external noise is so loud,
Uh-huh.
right? And so the
We
question
look at the
really
power
is
structures of our society, like the way things get done, the way decisions get made, and say, "Oh,
yeah,
that's what power looks
yeah,
like."
uh-huh, right?
Yeah.
This is what power is. So in the absence of someone saying like, let's define power together, maybe we should use a different word first and say, what I want for our culture, what I want for this organization, what I want for our partnership is that we both can stand in our truth and clarity rather than saying, I want both of us to stand in our power. When I feel into that, when I say to you, I want both of us to stand in our power, there's something opposing to that.
Yeah, I
There's
feel that.
something, right?
Yeah.
Right? But when I say I want both of us to stand in our truth and clarity, I feel like we both have a chance to show up who we are, um, and go on a journey of convergence with each other, whatever that means. We can define that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel invited into my authenticity when
Mm,
I'm
yeah.
asked to stand in my
Beautiful.
truth and my clarity.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And it's a much more of a turning inwards into what's true and what's clear in here for me, and am I willing to kind of find that and then speak it versus, yeah, when I hear stand in my power, I do kind of notice, yeah, my attention starts to go more outside of myself.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Isn't that
And I'm
interesting?
thinking a little more about how am I going to exert control over the situation?
And perception.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm.
Nice.
Yeah. Hmm.
So this rings a lot of parallels for me in just what I already know about your journey, your
Hmm.
story, and also your work, but
Hmm.
in terms of how you support leaders in turning more inwards
Mm-hmm.
to their emotional selves and their bodies
Mm-hmm.
to, I presume, find their truth and clarity and lead from that
Yeah.
place.
Hope so. Yeah. Yeah,
Nice.
that's true.
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah, I think the whole notion behind somatic leadership, or my company, Leadership That Heals, is that leadership as a way of being, not as a title, um, is a way, is a chance, is us getting a chance at creating a little bit more harmony in the world, and the community, through the communities around us, through the people that we touch on a daily basis. And we oftentimes do that by having enough interoceptive awareness, so awareness on the inside,
So we can create harmony within.
within first, so that we
Yeah.
know how good that feels, and bring that to the outside.
Nice.
I think the reason why most leadership development frameworks or programs or something like that actually are not sustainable or don't last is because it's not felt. Like we need a felt experience in order to change. Every neuroscientist would probably agree with that. And so if I don't really know why I'm doing it, and if it's just for the sake of like another commercial success, commercial goal, it doesn't last. People want to know why they're doing things. I could
People want
unpack this for a really long time, but I'm gonna make myself stop you.
people want truth and clarity.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I do want to. Well, so I want to get more into all of that with you, and I would like to take it first through the lens of telling us about how you got here,
Mm.
and how did you
Mm.
find how did you find your own way to this understanding of truth and clarity, to this connection to soul, as you're
Mm.
naming it,
Mhm.
through your own
Yeah.
journey. I find it so enlightening to get to hear how people, have
Yeah.
found their way to this kind of seeing.
Why they do what they do. Um, I've recently got the chance to like talk to someone at Forbes about like my entire life journey. And it was
It's a
really
great
brutal.
article.
Thank you, but it was really
Oh,
brutal.
oh,
And I think I think I want to talk about it because I cried so many tears over this interview. Um, and it was really hard realizing just how fucking messy my journey has been. And it, and it's like, and it's so beautiful to do that because, and to share this with you now, because we see those articles and then be like, man, like, how cool, like her work, it's like, show that. All I thought about was like, wow, what an opportunity this was to do another round of healing.
good for
Like
you.
this was really indeed enlightening. So I came to this work through my own trauma, which was my father's passing in 2013. Um, I was very much an alpha female, and meaning I had a company when I was in university. I was like flying around. I was doing research in Vietnam. I was high on life, but it had to be performative. It had to make sense, right?
What was
It
driving you in that stage? If you can tap back into like,
which version do you want? Do you want my kind of like 20 years ago version, or the version today? No, just kidding.
I watched what
Yeah,
you think. Yeah.
yeah.
I
So
want your truth and your clarity.
the truth and clarity is, I so badly wanted my dad to say, "I'm proud of you,"
Hmm,
so badly, for all my life, pretty much.
hmm.
Um, I had a very torn relationship with him. There was so much love and so much drama, so much confusion, so much secrecy. And it's really hard on me, like really, really hard. And I really wanted him to see that he doesn't need to correct me all the time. I really wanted him to see that I'm capable and smart and have good ideas. Um, and be enough, I think. Not just I think, I know. I want it to be enough. Um, and what that came with, that relationship with my dad, and I come from a family with like a pretty fractured divorce story. My parents divorced in a very unfortunate way. There was no conscious uncoupling or sort of like coming back together and saying sorry or anything like that. My father passed a few days after my mom came to the hospital and said, "Let's make peace before you go."
So grateful they had that at least.
Indeed, indeed, me
Yeah.
too. It created a lot of peace in my body too.
Yeah.
But I think what this ultimately created for me was years of anxiety and panic. Um, who am I? What? Why am I doing this now? Who am I going to say, look, how did I do it? Right? It was almost like there was no place to go in my body. It felt like I had no place to go anymore to kind of like show all the incredible work that I was doing. Where do I take all of my ambition? What is it
Yeah.
for? So I was left with like a blank canvas for my life, and made some pretty stupid decisions along the way. In that grief, took a job that I always wanted but shouldn't have taken during that time. Um, Broke up with my now husband and was then in a relationship with someone else that I shouldn't have been in a relationship with. Um, yeah, that I didn't let anybody in, right? I had to grieve all on my own because I, I think I was like just frozen inside. I made a few stupid decisions. Not stupid as in like I'm not judging myself for it. They were just like, even if I'm looking at it now, I'm just like, honey, that was stupid. Right.
Well,
So
you were
I'm
lost,
really okay saying that
right?
word.
What I hear is you were
I was
lost.
lost. I was
Yeah,
lost. Yeah.
I'd love to just
Yeah.
pause and sort of
Yeah.
linger with that for a moment because in sort of in my own cosmology of soul, as you and I have talked about in the past, like I see the way soul works through the dark times and the darkness, and how there is an element of becoming lost and even losing ourselves in the sense of exactly what you're speaking to, like losing the prior structure, losing the strategy, the ego strategy and identity that had driven you to that point had to fall apart for you to find something deeper. And man, that can really, yeah, that can really suck. And that can really
Yeah.
drive you into some completely misguided decisions, especially in a cultural environment that lacks the ingrained awareness and wisdom to guide you through that time of being lost.
Mhm.
Like it sounds like
Mhm.
you, like so many of us Westerners in our generation, are somewhat kind of left to your own devices to find your way.
Yeah, I do. I don't think anybody close to me knew how to grieve. Um, Nobody knew how to just be okay with being sad. Um, Being okay with not being okay. Everybody tried to fix something, heal something, go do this, talk to this person. Like, it's like looking back, all I really needed to do is probably just sit in silence or being held by someone and just be really quiet and really be sad. Be really sad. And even if there's a reason why some cultures grieve for 100 days, right? Like, I really needed to just grieve, but there was no in like the strategy of life that I had, there was no time to grieve. You needed to keep going,
Right.
right?
And that's what everyone around
There would
you was doing too.
totally, and there's something in our society in particular. There's something performative around grief, almost like, it's like, oh, your grief is worse than my grief. It was like, right, like those kind of things. Like, oh yeah, like I've gotten over it pretty quickly. Like, here's here are the 10 steps, that I followed. Right. I Yeah, that didn't work. And so I think, quote unquote, long story short, not really short, but like, what I ended up doing is I went to therapy, a couple years later, right before my first son was born. Because my son, beautifully enough, my son's due date, was my father's birthday. And so there were a few signs along the way where I was like, life is gonna keep going, right? And if you see him now, and if I send you a picture of him now, and I give you a picture of my dad, you know they're connected. They're doing something there. Um, so, but what happened with therapy is that therapy didn't work. I talked about everything, um, and it helped me in a few instances to just like gain some clarity. But the truth was, my body was still suffering, like legitimately suffering. Um, and so I started my own journey around like healing my nervous system, getting into somatics, like feeling my feelings, putting actual names behind the real emotions, describing it without needing to have the perfect word for it, um, anticipating when anxiety would kick in and holding myself, asking for help, asking to be held, like really basic things, right? I
But you
often
knew to
say like,
go to the body. Somehow you knew eventually that, like,
so here's how I got there.
yeah,
I remember one morning working out, um, in our backyard, and so as like working out, sports has always been a big part of my life. After my stepfather stepped into my life, and so I always knew that I always knew that this is where I needed to go if I needed relief. That's all I knew. And so I remember sitting in my office looking out into the backyard that I had just worked out in and being like, why is it that I always feel better when I work out? Right? And so this is what I started Googling, like being like, what is it? And then I started going into the neuroscience of it. And then I started into like going into like cortisol and like, and I went so deep, and then I took courses on neuroscience, and then I took courses on somatics, and like movement therapy and gestalt therapy and all of this kind of stuff. And I just dove in, right? I was just sort of like, this is it. And so, funny enough, the two things that I did for months, because I was, before giving birth, was yoga nidra and working out. They always happened in like sort of like in juncture with each other. And I always joke with like folks that I get to work with. I always joke with sort of like, if you take yoga nidra seriously enough, you will heal, right?
yes.
So it's like, we don't need to make it too complicated. You just gotta do it twice a day, morning and evening, or morning and afternoon. And they're like, but I can't just like, pull out for like 20 minutes. I was like, yes, you can.
And just do nothing. Just lay there, right?
Right. And
It's
just
so counter
listen.
to our conditioning.
And
Yeah.
yeah, just listen. Just listen to that lady in your headphones, right? Like,
Right.
she's gonna guide you perfectly through it. You don't need to do anything on your own. And so there were times when there's this one yoga nidra that I did about probably 200 to 250 times. And it's a 45-minute one. So it's a long yoga nidra. Um, and I would just say to my now husband, I would say like, honey, it's time. And he's like, all right, see you in 45. Right. And that's what I did. And this is how most of my nervous system started to rejuvenate and heal. I very much believe in it. And I still do it up until today. I wake up, I do a yoga nidra for 20 minutes. Um, and it's like, that's just me. That's what I do.
It guides you to your
And
truth.
absolutely. And not just that, it just guides me into clarity of sort of like where I need to be for the day. There's a lot. I have 3 kids. I run a business. I have a husband. I run another business with my husband. Like, there's a lot of things going on, right? We just moved to another country. We're learning a new language. Like, my nervous system is operating at a very high level, right? I need to nurture it. I need to take care of it. I need to love it. And I can only see the amazingness of my life if my nervous system feels that too. My nervous system doesn't perceive my life as a threat because it's so overextended, um, and tired and exhausted, right? And there are days where I feel that, and then I'm like, we're not doing anything today, guys, right? Our bodies they're still catching up. And I can sense it in my kids now, right? When my son wakes up and is exhausted and tired, and I can see there's like his body is just, he's kind of like outside of his body. I say, we're not going to school today. Go back to bed. Um, and then I turn on handpan music for him. I always do that. I turn on handpan music. He falls back asleep. He wakes up at 11 a.m. and he's like, I feel so good, Mom. It's like, yep, that's what, you know. The little ones have a bit of a harder time with that because they're still little and they're still fighting in a little bit. I mean, like, going back to bed, I just woke up.
Yeah,
I
right.
can't do that.
But what a gift to have a mom who's attuned in that way. And like
Yeah.
what came up for me there was, wow, you're teaching them how to let their body lead.
Oh, yeah.
Like
I mean, this is
you've
one of the reasons
learned how to,
why we moved to
yeah.
Portugal, is to take them out of a school system that tells them by 7:45 you have to function, right? By 7:45 you have to sit down and your mind has to be sharp no matter how you feel. Right? And then you have to sit there for hours on end and I don't care how you're feeling. And you always have to raise your
Right.
hand if there's some, you know.
Oh,
So,
geez. Yeah, just
yeah.
like, I'm like feeling crushed. Just
Yeah.
and like
Yeah.
especially the little ones, there's so much wildness.
Yeah.
I think there's so much wildness actually inherent in all of us, but it's like so close to the surface at that time in our lives.
Yeah.
And it's such a beautiful, sacred thing. And we
Mhm.
are so good as a society at conditioning it out of ourselves or attempting to. You can't actually ever get rid of it, I think, but
That's
we
true.
attempt
That's
to,
true.
and then
That's
it
why we have
causes
the
all
problems that we
these
do.
negative consequences. Yeah, right.
Mhm. Yeah.
So was this the same son that has been on quite a healing journey with you? Is
No,
it a different son? Okay.
no. I mean, this is the son that just needs sleep.
Uh-huh. Okay.
He's just, I don't know if you see this with your child too, but like there's some kids who need a lot of sleep, and then there's some kids like me, like my mom always tells me, it's like you never needed a lot of sleep,
Yeah.
and I still don't. I'm a very happy human being on 6 hours. I almost feel better at 6 hours
Hmm.
with 6 hours of sleep than with 8 hours of sleep. There's something there where my body's like,
Hmm.
this is your middle ground. This is where you thrive.
Fascinating.
My middle son had my middle son sort of like was another big element in my own personal journey too, because he was born with very severe eczema. And we knew it was partially genetic because my sisters had it, and then there was a few cases in Ted's family too. But my sisters also had it quite severe. And so I was like, oh, this must be like leftover from my family. And it was interesting because my sister's kids had none of it, and my kids got what she had. So it was like, it was just sort of like, what? Um, um, and back in the days, my mom just healed it through nutrition and just, decade-long patience. until hormones changed and the teenage years kind of like took it away. What we realized through very honest, radical self-inquiry with ourselves is that any autoimmune, not any, but most autoimmune illnesses are being treated like it's an emergency illness. So if I have a broken arm, I go to the hospital and make sure that my broken bone gets fixed so I can continue to use. That's an emergency. Autoimmune is chronic. There's not an emergency. And autoimmune literally means the nervous system is out of whack, and as a result, the body cannot sort of like take care of some of the functions in the body as it should. And I had a very harsh moment of awakening for myself, realizing that I was taking away healing from my own son because I was so obsessed around healing him, that I almost aggravated it because I was stressing him out. So if I would say, no, honey, you can't eat that. Don't eat that, right? I was actually making it worse. And I get into that in a second, but like there were several instances, or like I would cook every single piece of food for him myself. I would give him food when he would go to other friends' places, right? I like it was. We went to all the doctors and all the tests, and like I did what every mother listening to this probably would be like. Of course, I would do that too. Like, duh,
Trying your
right?
best to help. Yeah.
Right, exactly. But what we learned is that kids actually feel the stress of another person even more than adults do, because that is their sense of safety,
Right.
basically, right? So they want to adapt to your stress levels, because this is how they claim safety for themselves, because they don't know anything else. Which is, as an example, which is why many people in toxic relationships continue to be in toxic relationships throughout their life if they don't break that cycle, because it probably was their first reference point of how love looks like. That's most often the case. And so what we did is we ditched all the lotions, all the creams, everything, and then just did nervous system regulation work.
Together, right? Like as a family.
Yes, as a family. Mostly me and Ted, to be honest.
Just yourself.
We had to regulate ourselves on that front. We had to change a few dynamics in our family of like how we were operating.
Wow.
In order to allow more slow time. We had to talk even more about what we were seeing with him. We realized that transitions are really hard for him. Because we stepped away from trying to heal him, we were actually started to observe him and started to see what he needed. And we saw that the transitions throughout the day were really hard for him. So going from home to kindergarten to home, And so what I then started doing was that when I would pick him up from kindergarten, I would just drive for 20 minutes and say nothing and just play calm music. And then he would start talking. Right? And I was like, is there anything out that needs to come out just so that your body feels a little freer today? And he'd be like, this kid, I don't know, this kid Daniel, like he hit me today and that really hurt me. And I was like, where do you want to put that? Right? Like, I'm sure that didn't feel really well. And he's like, I'm just going to put it in my hand. And I was like, yeah, do you want to throw it out of the window? And he's like, yeah, good idea. Right? And then we would just like throw it out of the window or something. And it became a routine. And then we also learned that scratching is actually very nervous system regulating. And I would tell him, don't scratch, don't scratch, don't scratch. And so I would cut his nails so short that he couldn't scratch anymore. And every time he would scratch, I tapped myself. I would do this. so
To
that
help
I would
you regulate yourself.
so I could
Right.
regulate myself. He wouldn't feel that I was agitated anymore. He wouldn't look at me and being basically waiting for me to say, please don't scratch. And I would just keep going.
Wow.
And then he stopped scratching. And so his skin started to heal. And then when he couldn't sleep because of the itchies, so he was in Band-Aids for 4 years at night. And so because of that, we would be like, oh, the little sleepy hormones are coming in. This is why you're a little bit itchy, not because you have eczema, right? Like it's because your body really needs to rest now. So if you let your crusties, right? We always call them crusties on the side. If you let your crusties sleep, then your body can heal. And we wouldn't put creams on anymore. We wouldn't get the another ice pack or whatever it is. And I would always, before he would go to bed, I would put a protection layer on top of him. I would always say, I would just want to make sure you're protected tonight. And I wouldn't touch his body. And at the beginning, he was like, Mama, you need to do more. I'm like, my whole body. And I was like, okay, like my whole body. And then he would be like, okay, yeah, that feels better. And then at some point when his skin got better, he literally said to me, I'm okay now. You don't need to do it anymore.
Wow.
And it's like, it's like, I mean, I cannot tell you, Brooks, literally, there are parts of this journey that I still have I can't tell you why this happened the way it did. And I still don't have I can't give you the scientific, sort of resources to be like, oh, you just need to read that. We literally just went with the belief that the nervous system creates self-healing. And it did.
Yeah. I'm so inspired by this story. And
Yeah, me too.
God, I mean, what a beautiful example of what is possible when we actually just can trust our own innate healing potential. And then also when we really take radical responsibility for ourselves. Like that is not that took a lot of trust and a lot of self-mastery really for you and your husband to say, "Oh my God, this is not just about him." Like we're creating this by being so anxious about it all the time and trying to fix it and treating it like a problem, treating him like there's something wrong with him versus actually just like taking care of ourselves so that we can give him the space to heal in the way he knows how.
There's a beautiful exercise that I do that I just did actually last week in my I have those women's leadership circles for somatic leadership, and there's a beautiful exercise where you step on a ball. Like everybody had to bring a ball, and then we center at the beginning, and then they step on the ball, and they have to put all of their attention towards the ball for 2 minutes. And really feel what it feels like to focus all of your attention on the pain of standing on that ball, right? And you stay there and you sort of really try to breathe in and breathe out all of the pain. And what happens in your body? What else starts to create? Where else does the body create tension? And then we let that simmer for a moment. And then after about 2.5 minutes, I guide people and say, don't step off the ball, but bring your somatic, your physical attention to another place in your body that feels like an opening, that feels lighter, that feels like there's possibility in there, right? A lot of people go further up. Women also tend to go sort of close to the uterus area. Because that's where a lot of their creative, also healing energy and also really fertile energy sits, right? Literally physically. And then we stay there for about 2 minutes and do the same thing again, to really try to focus on that part of your body. And by just holding the pressure on the ball, but really feeling the lightness of what that spot, given the spot that you chose. And one of the wonderful women in this group said, and then afterwards we did some sharing after sort of like everybody came with an intention of a piece in their lives of something where they're trying to take the pressure off and finding more lightness without negating that it's there.
Yeah.
Right? Like toxic positivity is actually when we're trying to be all positive and negate that the problem or that the pain is there. That's not what that doesn't work. What we want to create is capacity in our body to hold the pain and to hold the grief or hold the suffering or to hold the problem or hold the challenge without getting helpless or creating helplessness in our system. Right? So long story short, she shared that this gave her an entire new perspective, a felt perspective on how chronic pain is exaggerated because we're focusing on it.
Yeah.
And if I would share with anyone of like what that healing journey with my son, my own healing journey, or anybody I get to work with, their journeys are, then it's that exercise. We're trying to create capacity to like bring some more lightness somewhere in our system, in our bodies, to then feel a new sense of possibility and choice and creativity or whatever it is, whatever you need, healing, right? And to then look back on that pain point and be like, I have a chance. I have a chance at healing this, right? You do this exercise, it's from somatic therapy, and you do it actually for a lot of PTSD patients in particular, because they have a really hard time like having or creating capacity in their bodies for like all the suffering that they've experienced. And so it's a really beautiful exercise to kind of practice that.
Wow. The power of our attention and the power of our own ability to resource ourselves.
Yeah, it's a resourcing. Totally.
Yeah.
Love it.
Just to find, like, by the way we choose to show up, where we direct our attention and how we are relating to whatever intensity is happening.
Yeah.
It reminds me too of what you were sharing before around all the things that are happening in your life right now. 3 kids, new city, running your own company, and how important it is for you to resource yourself through yoga nidra practice. And it's this beautiful paradox, isn't it? I was actually sharing about this with a client yesterday who's on a deep healing journey, and this paradox of how actually slowing down and allowing more, just allowing what is to be, allowing that ball to be under my foot, allowing that pain to be there, choosing to accept it and supporting myself in accepting it by directing my attention to places that are maybe more open and pleasurable. It's like I stop fighting it. That's another layer that I hear in that. It's like stop resisting
Yes.
what is, but find the capacity to be with what is, which to many of our egos in our culture kind of initially raises all kinds of alarm bells. Like, what do you mean stop fighting? What do you mean pay attention somewhere else, or just let it be here? No, I can't let it be here. And so, but then the paradox is that when we actually do find that space of acceptance, we also find how capable we are. We also expand that capacity, and then we're able to embrace so much more intensity, but coming from this place that's much more open, much more creative, much more vibrant.
In my work, I call this active non-resistance. It's something that you actively
Nice.
have to pursue.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's really a practice. It's really of just sort of like I don't know how I would be interested to hear like how it is for you, but for me to go into active non-resistance is always to create a little bit more space in my chest. It's almost like it's a tiny tilt of leaning back, and then kind of like there's like almost like space that gets created on the outer edges of my chest. It's sort of like, right? That for me embodies active non-resistance. And then the thoughts and the possibility that streams through me is like a first hint of what's possible. If I continue to lean into that. And what I often do then is that I either journal about it or I talk to someone about it, and just to sort of like walk the talk in many
To help
ways.
it land in
To
reality.
help, yeah.
Yeah. Nice.
And to really also and to look for a first place of doing something with it, with that.
Application. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. For me, I notice that when I'm resisting somatically, energetically, I tend to be really up in my head, or like kind of neck up, and even actually out. Like I'm sort of like we were talking about power earlier. Like I'm out, my consciousness is out there in the world trying to manage how people see me and what is happening around me. And so when I catch myself resisting, controlling in that way, I find it super useful, to breathe down into my belly, down into my root and the soles of my feet. And I just feel this like settling. It's like this coming home and this sort of relaxing across my body. And then it's cool because then actually what tends to follow that is this opening in my chest and this sort of radiant warmth. When I visualize it, it's like it's an actual light. Like it's a sort of that I think of as the light of my soul, the light of my genuine expression that's always there. And what it takes for me to let it flow and allow it to direct me into the world is, that space of active non-resistance, as you put it, grounding in what
It's a
is.
bit of a mind twist, right? It's like active non-resistance.
I like it because
Yeah.
it's sort of like paradoxical in the language. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's it's very it's good. It's just good. There's also the opposite of active non-resistance is passive resistance.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot of things that we passively just resist in life
Yeah.
habitually,
Oh, that's
right?
good. Yeah.
Right? It's like, oh, like, I don't, I don't like broccoli. It's like, since when? Well, ever, like I've never liked it. It's like,
Yeah, right. It's just part of who I am. Yeah.
it's just stuff like, oh, so you're just
Yeah.
resisting the chance at potentially adding another vitamin to your diet, right? It's just, so let's try, like, why don't we try that broccoli and put some almonds on top and some good, good seasoning and try again.
Yeah,
And then it's like, oh, it's like actually not that bad. Oh,
right.
really?
Yeah.
Right? That's active non-resistance.
Yeah.
But it's just sort of like letting possibility just like stream through you again.
Yeah. Well, and passive resistance also makes me think of what you were pointing to earlier around like pretending the pain isn't there.
Oh yeah. I mean, in the type of leadership work that I do, passive resistance shows up all the time, right? I cannot believe my head of sales or like VP of operator or whatever does that all the time. It's like, is he or she doing it all the time, or are you seeing her or him this way all the time? Right? Like, if you're staying in that passive resistance of understanding why he or she is operating the way she or he does, of course you're not going to find a conclusion, but then it's a prisoner's dilemma. You're both not moving, right? Active non-resistance would be like, what's the next curious question you can ask her or him that would disarm her and potentially give you both an opening to relate to each other and be like, yeah, that phase have been hard, and I think I've kind of adopted some bad habits. Thanks for pointing it out. Oh, that was easy, like it's like yeah.
Yeah. What do you see as, and maybe in particular in your work with leaders, like what do you notice is most commonly behind the resistance?
No capacity, absolute like fight, flight, freeze, fawn, right? Don't forget the fawning. It's an actual
Yeah.
for that
Yeah.
response. Yeah,
So reduced
absolutely.
capacity, they're
Absolutely.
stretched,
Yeah.
and so they're scared, and so they
I,
resist.
I, I don't even know whether they know that they're actually scared or anything like that. It's like they've been in that state for so long. Some of them for so long, like I'm saying like 20 years. Like I'm saying preschool. Like
Fight, flight, freeze has just become
they don't
the
know any
normal.
other way of operating.
Yeah,
It's
they
just
don't like broccoli, and that's how they roll.
that right.
Right?
It's the broccoli of life, right? It's if you've known for all of your life that in order to get somewhere, you always have to run, right? Like we teach our children that in school very early on, right? If you want to, especially I find like America's really good at that. If you want to be someone, pretty much by the time you're like 6 years old, you already have to know which sports you play so that the next scholarship, so that we know which university you can attend, so that you know which job you can choose. So, and it's like, what? I
Yeah.
don't, right? Like,
Ugh.
I don't know. One of my favorite uh quote unquote exercises is for people to practice I don't know.
Yeah, beautiful.
How disruptive that feels to most people's nervous system. Like it's I don't want to say hilarious because that would not honor um us, all of us, in a way. But there is something ridiculing about of just sort of like how far away we've gotten. And I include myself. I want to say that. I include myself. I used to be so hard on myself, and it would really put me into like a fight or flight response if I did not know. My entire body would narrow, like it felt like my entire body was narrowed down. My peripheral vision would like get really small. I would start to sweat, and you know, in an active non-resistance, I'm like, I don't know. Chest open, eyes wide open. I don't know. What happens? What happens if I don't know? Well, shit, nothing happens. Nothing happens if I don't know. What actually happens is that your nervous system relaxes
Yeah,
because
you open.
you're allowing yourself to not know. You give yourself permission to feel what needs to be felt. And what the funny part is, the right side of the brain opens back up, and you probably know within the next 24 hours.
Yeah, right.
Uh,
Either you
no, I
already
mean, I've
knew
seen
and
it.
it was somewhere in there totally,
Yeah,
or you've made yourself open to learning, because it's like when we don't know,
exactly.
that's actually a prerequisite to learning something new
Yeah,
is
yeah,
is not knowing.
yeah, exactly. So just allowing that is a huge, I think, I mean, as you probably also feel like it's a huge element of healing to like, I don't know what my body needs right now. Let me
Yeah.
tune in,
Yeah. Well,
right?
it really brings me back to, this theme also of trust and trusting ourselves, that
Mm,
it's okay to not know, that
mm-hmm,
we right that we that doesn't need to feel like a threat, because we don't
mm-hmm,
need to be reliant on knowing to be
mm-hmm.
okay or worthy or safe or in control or whatever. Um,
What what I learned too is that it oftentimes, if we allow ourselves to not know, we actually get better at asking and relating with others. Like I feel like there's more humanity is possible when we don't know. Like because when we know, we can commercialize everything that we need to do. Right? It's like now I need to do this. Now I need to buy this. Now there's some I have a hard time at describing that actually because it's like something that I think I need to get better at like just verbalizing. But there's something really commercial that happens when we try to always know. Um, like there's something that happens that it's almost like we're trying to materialize it. Um, whereas not knowing actually allows us to even just like when I feel into myself right now, like the first thing that comes to body and mind for me when I allow myself to not know, I think about like a very big moment in time right now. The first thing that I feel is I have a mother who loves me. I have a husband who's unconditionally loving and always there for me. And I have at least 3 friends that I know would always show up for me. That's the first thing. That's the first thing that happens to me when I say I don't know.
Wow. You connected
That
to your resources
people.
and your
That's what I'm saying. It's
connections.
like,
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
does that mean? Belonging. What we
Yeah.
need in order to
Hmm.
figure things out is for us to belong, right? To like and to find safety. I talk a lot
Yeah.
about belonging,
Yep.
safety, and dignity in my work, right?
Yeah.
Like it's core to our nervous system health is belonging, safety, and dignity.
Yeah. What comes up for me is when I enter into the sort of mindset of I don't know, is I notice uh I start to listen and like really openly listen, not listening with an agenda because I'm trying to manipulate or get somewhere, but listening to my body, listen with real genuine wonder and curiosity, listening with my body to my body, listening to life. And that's a lot of where how this folds into my work with people is supporting them in what is it like to actually enter into the perspective or the mindset that you know to have the world as an ally, that life is happening for you, not to you, and it's here to help wake you up. And so when we allow ourselves not to know, we make ourselves available to actually, I think, really open our eyes and our ears and listen and see to our deeper selves, I would say, to our souls, to life, and, the greater intelligence out there. But also, to your point, like to actually listening to each other and other people. And like if you're in a boardroom and there's a big
Yeah.
decision to be made, like much does it how much more effective is
hmm
that when people are genuinely open and listening to each other and allowing themselves not to know?
hmm hmm So much. Yeah, I've had several moments like that of just sort of like, what if we all agree that we don't know? What happens? And it's almost like there was like a big sigh in the room. So it's like, okay, thanks God. We don't know right now. It's like
Yeah.
nobody needs to pretend
Yeah.
that we do. It creates space. We all relax. Our bodies feel a little bit more. It feels safer. There's a little bit more dignity in the room because it doesn't feel like somebody can sort of like take something away from you right now. Um,
Yeah.
and there's what less winning or losing. I was
Yeah.
just talking to I was just talking to my own coach a few weeks ago about this, and um, just kind of like emphasizing how like if we lead from a place of winning, it also means that someone is always losing. Do we want that? Do we want that?
Yeah. Is that really what we're
Right?
after?
Is that
Yeah.
really what we're after?
Hmm. Yeah. So I'd love to bring into this conversation with you the language and the idea of soulful impact. And uh, it really was ringing in my head earlier when you were speaking about your journey with your son and his eczema, actually, but also in our conversation about leadership and teams too, because a key element of how I'm conceiving of soulful impact and how I'm kind of approaching this, it's really an exploration like that this show is about, is sort of exploring what that means. And I have certain ideas about it. And one of those ideas is that it's sort of a new definition of impact that flips on its head a lot of well, actually, come to think of it, flips on its head a lot of the preconceptions about maybe power or influence, as you named them earlier in our conversation. My own experience of how so many of us relate to the idea of impact, especially in the realm of business or leadership, is it's got to be big. It's got to be like at large scale, impacting millions of people, or um, that's what real impact is like really, you know, wrangling some, like, putting your thumb on the scale on a global scale. And I'm really enjoying, looking at the opposite of that and checking out the possibility that, like, well, what if like the impact that you and your husband made with your kid
Yeah.
is just as, if not more important, or like
Mm-hmm.
actually transformative towards the real kind of world that we want
Mm-hmm.
to live in.
Um, I think both have a reason to be here. Um, I think a question to always ask yourself is what's important now.
Mm,
Um, and for me, it's more important that we get to a place where we don't, where like the importance of building a business doesn't come at the cost of healing your children, for instance, right? It was really easy for me. So what I did is I stepped away from my business for about it was good like 8 months. 8 months. I just had my calls. I didn't do anything else. I didn't write. I didn't no podcasts. Nothing else around building my business. No business development. No conversations. Nothing. Just existing clients. Um, and many would have said like that's a really stupid idea. You kind of got to make it work, right? But what's important in that moment for me right now is that my son can live a life of dignity and integrity, right? By living a really like joyful, uh, joyful childhood. Because his health impacts how I can go to work too. And it really did. It really did. Like I did not, I mean, he basically didn't sleep for the first 4 years of his life. Like the exhaustion in our family system was so real. My husband had onset hypertension from the lack of sleep that he experienced, right? Like taking care of health has everything to do with impact, everything. And if you can't allow yourself the multidimensionality of what quote unquote success looks like, then that's where we need to start, right? That if the only singular focus you can have is like the success of your organization, and then I think this is what we traditionally would call a midlife crisis later on, right? Isn't that what it is?
yeah.
Right. So
Eventually it falls apart.
the same applies to sort of like how I perceive the impact that I make with my work, right? My time
Mhm.
is limited, right? I can only work with so many people. So what do? I need to make sure that I choose people that I believe will go on to impact many. I call it the few to many approach, right? Like if I make sure that the people that I get to work with do something legitimate with it, then I impact not just the, let's say, 15 people that I work with on a regular, at any moment in time, but like multiplied by X, right? Um,
And what I'm really
so say,
appreciating
yeah,
is, sorry to jump in, but
no, no, go ahead.
yeah, what I'm really appreciating is the way that you bring into that work this deep integrity with yourself and this deep commitment
Hmm.
to your own well-being, and then that, how that's also part of how you lead and mentor folks,
Totally.
is because if
Well,
they're
it's
not, like we were talking about before, if they're not resourced, if they're not taking care of themselves so they can really be in
yeah,
their full capacity, they're never going to actually make the impact that they really can
yeah,
in any
yeah,
part of
yeah,
their
yeah,
lives.
yeah, yeah. I think, to be frank, I think, and I think I made a LinkedIn post about this like a week ago, 2 weeks ago. I need to check, but like the amount of time I spent over the last 7 months after coming here to Portugal, sitting somewhere, waiting for my child to feel comfortable in a new place was gut-wrenching at times. I was like, oh man, yet another day. Here we go. Right? Like my kids did not immediately feel comfortable and dive in and being like, that's not my kids. And I have to honor that. Right. But I think especially for women, because of that sort of like maternal bond that we share with our children, there's something very real when those children came through you. Right. I just couldn't get to a place where I would tell myself, oh, if I just leave right now and they cry for a little bit and I'll be back at work in the next 10 minutes, everything will be fine. I just couldn't get myself to believe that. And what it does is there would have been so much inauthenticity almost of just like, I call this the transparency gap, right? Like with what I feel on the inside, I feel the pain of my children, right? Because mothers are really attached to that. Or like we can really feel it. Let me put it that way. So many people have such a strong reaction to attachment these days. Right. So there's such a strong feeling. I see my kids crying, and I know that feels. So do I make sure and stay for another 20 minutes, sort of like walk them through it again, do a few exercise around like, making them feel safe, like talk to the teachers again, make sure my son knows that I talked to the teacher again, like all of that kind of stuff. And then go back home and be like, this is exactly what I'm going to use showing up for my calls now. The patience, the belonging, the safety, the dignity, right? Like people are like, but how do you do it with like kids in your business? I was like, I just don't separate it. There's no separation in the way I show up for my kids and for my business. If people need to wait because I need to take care of my children, then that so be it. Does it mean that I can create, incredible value during that call? Because yes, right? So I think at least in my line of work, right? I think this is fundamental, that I show up that way. And I think as an organizational leader, we need to create cultures and policies and ways of being where that is allowed. When people talk to me about like, so here, here's our benefits list. And I was like, no shit, man. Look at that benefits list. That looks incredible, right? How do you handle mothers that have to leave, or fathers? How do you leave when they have to leave the office? 2 hours after they came in because school called and the kids are sick. What's your reaction to that? Not like what you tell them, your reaction.
Yeah, not what the policy says, but like, how do you
Right,
as
your
the leader show up?
honest,
Yeah.
your honest reaction.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, sometimes I feel a little bit resentment about it. All right, let's go. Let's dive in.
Nice.
Right? Like, where's that resentment coming from?
Oh man.
Right?
Yeah,
Like,
that's this
why
is
are you
what it
resenting
actually looks
someone?
like to build healthy, empowering cultures.
Yeah.
It's for the
Yeah.
leaders to be doing that work.
Right. Like I want to know how you pay your people so that they can take care of their families, right? What went into that, right? What does that sort of like income classification, what does that embody? What value stands behind that? Like we have to allow ourselves to ask those like really nasty questions.
Yep.
They're nasty. They're
Yeah.
really, really nasty.
Yeah, they're scary because they challenge the status quo, but that's what it means to really create
It's really
change.
easy to be in the passive resistance around that, right?
Exactly.
Well, this is what our industry does. Okay,
Exactly.
well, great.
Yeah. Right.
That's how your product probably also looks like. That's what the industry does. I'm like,
Yeah,
right, but do you want to create an excellent product? Yeah, I do. Well, then you need excellent people. Where do the people come from? Right? And what do they want to feel when they go here? Well, belonging, safety, and dignity. The stuff is
Love
like,
it. Love
yeah.
it. Yeah. I want to underline too what you said, in terms of how I see you achieving that balance between between work and family. And you said people ask you like, how do you do it? Was that part of how I see you doing it is like you said, really attuning to what's needed now, what's here now in the present moment, and really trusting and listening to that, which requires you to be resourced and to have your capacity online. I have so learned this lesson myself through my own parenting journey. Um, yeah, with our daughter who likewise has really struggled with sleep.
Yeah, I remember I was talking about it.
Yeah, right. That's been just I've struggled mightily with it. Oh my God. And, I've really learned part so much of my struggle for a long time was rooted in my own resistance to it and also to and my kind of attachment to the ideas of how I was supposed to be and what I needed to do to show up my full self at work, et cetera, et cetera. I was really not willing for a long time to accept the reality of what she needs
Right.
from me. And then it's been this incredible shift and I'm very much still in the journey, but to actually begin to feel what it's like to actually trust it.
Yeah.
Say, okay, this is
Yeah.
what's here now. And right, like let myself feel all of my feelings about it. Like, yeah, breathe down into my belly, into my root, come home to really caring for myself so that I can drop my agenda, drop my ideas of how this is supposed to be right now and actually be with how it really is right now.
Mm-hmm.
And then actually how much that's just actually unlocked a whole new level of creativity and
Hmm.
expansion and possibility for me in my work and in other ways. Not because I have more hours where I'm well slept enough to be grinding, but because of that deeper presence and attunement.
Yeah, I think in many ways, I think it's twofold for me. One is getting out of my own way and stop doing things that I shouldn't be doing. Um, that was a big, big, big piece for me. Very uncomfortable because I thought it was supposed to do it all. Be the great mother and the incredible business person, and then run all processes inside of my business. And because I had to know if I hire someone, what it really feels like to do this. And luckily enough, I have people who call me out on my own BS sometimes. Uh, yeah, Mondays at 5 p.m. is particular time because that's when I meet with my own coach, and he's really good at that. Um, and so that was huge, getting out of my own way. So right now, the way it looks is that for the next year and a half, the goal is that Francie only shows up for calls, does her reading, does her writing, and keeps learning. And that's all she does. She doesn't do anything else. And she takes care of her children. Because and I know this now, part of my quote unquote success at life is actually be a very involved mother. I love being a mother. Um, and I'd have like 10 children if pregnancy wasn't so hard. Right. But what that enables me is to always ask, should I be doing this? Should I be doing this? Should I be doing this? And I'm actually really very much willing to invest money into not doing things that I'm not supposed to do because it does not add to my capacity in this current moment in my life where my kids are small and I'm also running a business. Um, and then the second piece is I'm in an incredible marriage. I really think that my marriage is the ultimate enabler of it all. Like the way Ted and I show up for each other, enable each other, support each other, criticize each other, challenge each other, fight with each other, um, is the reason why I am where I am. He is. I know for myself that I need a great sense of belonging in my life, not just because of where I come from. I think this is sort of like the soul contract that I came with when I was born. I think I finally made that connection a few years ago. Big, I go out with very different radical ideas. I want to be someone that challenges the status quo, but then when I come home, I really want to like be home, and I want to feel that for myself. And so that sense of home, that sense of belonging, that sense of love, is a really big deal for me. And it's part of how I set up my business. Like I need time to connect with my family on a daily basis. Otherwise, I'm running out of energy.
Hmm. Good for you.
So I need to prioritize that.
Yeah. Beautiful. So, how would you advise someone who is just getting started on the path of paying attention to their body
Hmm.
and allowing their
Yeah.
inner truth and clarity to guide them? How would you advise people to start?
If it comes from a place of kind of like exhaustion, burnout, some level of helplessness, grief, overwhelm, that type of stuff, I would say, as we said before, start, with the movements and the slowing down. I think those are key. Um, and after a yoga nidra or after some form of silence with yourself, feeling your breath, doing some journaling. Like I always say, like there's always a next thought that comes out of a practice like that. There's always like the first thing that rushes back to the mind, right? Journal about that. Take it apart. Be curious about it. Don't judge it. Like, right? That is so crucial. In healing, curiosity trumps everything. Um, because we have to take the judgment out, because judgment is a performative engagement with our own state, and that leads to nowhere, or a deeper hole, depending on how you want to look at it. Um, and then the second thing I think, which I really like or really liked also back then when I did it, was tracking your own charge throughout the day. So when you wake up until you go to bed, sort of like every an hour, maybe every two, every three, depending how like also severe it is, track your charge based on the activities that you've just done. Track your internal charge, whether you're really calm or really activated, whether your breath is really shallow or really deep, whether your silhouette, we call it the somatic shape, feels really tense, or whether you feel really fluid, right? Those kind of things, kind of like track them throughout the day, um, given what you've just done. So, for instance, like you go to work, you arrive, how do you feel, right? You just got out of a meeting with someone, right? How do you feel? Or you're going into a meeting, how do you feel? So those kind of like you come home, you share with a beloved one of, how your day went, how do you feel? So tracking your charge and kind of like understanding what your emotional patterns are, where you experience a lot of high agitation or anxiety or something like that, versus what really rejuvenates you, where do you calm down. We're surprised sometimes how small the things are that are actually really good for us, right? For some, it could be that driving home by yourself, listening to good music is actually super soothing, right? Do more of that. Um, I always say having someone who holds your hand on that journey to kind of like nudge you to like move on, move a little further than what you think you're capable of, just to sort of like teach your nervous system to increase capacity is really helpful, right? That could be, of course, that could be a therapist, but someone probably with a somatic angle. Um, someone like you and I who like work with the nervous system and, also have like related back to sort of like what do you want to accomplish in your life as a whole. Um, f- um, but it could also be a friend, right? Who's just sort of like, hey, I'm going to text you every single day about how I'm feeling, and I just want you to receive it because I just want to feel like I'm not alone in it, right? Creating like an environment of belonging. This is why I created the women's group, right? So that women feel more comfortable coming together, sharing, being enabled by each other, knowing that I can experience myself through the experience of others and be like, I'm so glad I'm not alone in this, right? Like it creates so much comfort in a moment when we're so vulnerable. So finding groups that support you in that.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, my friend. Thank you for all of your
Thank you.
time and your truth and your clarity. Thanks for sharing your journey with us. Thanks for sharing
Thank
your
you.
wisdom with us.
Thank
And
you.
we'll have lots of links in the show notes for folks to connect with you.
Yeah.
But is there anything in particular you'd like to highlight in terms of what you're
Mm.
focused on next?
I think if you want to get to know a little bit more of how I think about my thinking, how I feel about my feelings, how I listen to my listening, that my Substack is probably a good place. I Yeah, I'm planning to do a first retreat in Portugal next year, so there will be more coming by the end of this year, and then yeah, always reach out. I think, the I'm really trying to create a home for people, for high performers. So I'm not this like coach that's like, putting a bunch of stuff on the internet and like it's hard to get and hard to reach. It's like just reach out, book a call, let's hang out. Like
Great.
it's always about fit, right? I meet so many people and with some it works out and some it doesn't, and for all the right reasons. So let's hang out.
All right. You won't regret it. I promise.
Love
Thanks
it.
again, my
Okay.
friend. Take care.
Much love. Thank you so much.
Much love. Thanks so much for tuning into this episode. If you, like me, feel passionate about this idea of redefining the way we think about impact to a bit more of a soulful orientation and what that could do for our planet, for our species, for all beings, then please, 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 I'd love to ask for your help. If you could just take a moment to subscribe on whatever platform you receive this podcast and leave, if it feels right to you, a glowing 5-star review. That will do wonders in supporting me in growing this show, attracting more amazing guests, and really bringing this movement, this exploration out into the world. Last but not least, a reminder that if you're enjoying this show and feel called to take your own journey to the next level, we'd love to invite you to come experience our work at Soulful Impact. Our goal with everything that we do is to support you in coming more fully alive so that you can create authentic, aligned, and regenerative impact while also deeply enjoying and thriving in your life. Learn more and reach out anytime at soulfulimpact.co.